Jay McCleary, City of Red Wing. I found out about him kind of in a second connection way. The vendor who they worked with was talking to me, and he was telling me about Red Wing and showing me pictures and saying, look what you can do. And he said, you know, that guy's so enthusiastic, he may even come over and talk to you. And he was right. So he and his wife came over yesterday and enjoyed a meal on the riverfront, a walk on the River Edge Trail. So they've been sampling our community. And
it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
Give us a taste of it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for having me here today. This is an absolute pleasure. It's nice to see a lot of people that are interested in at least hearing concepts that may be workable here in Wausau. Just a little background. I worked for the City of Red Wing for 34 years. I retired 2.5 years ago. I worked for the day I started to the day I ended. I was the purchasing agent for the entire City of Red Wing. When I first started, that's all I did. By the time I was done, communities that are smaller tend to share many hats, and I did that. For a while, I was in charge of fleet management. I was also in charge of buildings and grounds. When I finally finished, I was a deputy director of public works, and my main focus was budget, finance, and personnel in that side. But again, the entire time I was the purchasing agent, and so the finance side of this project was a key as to, again, how are we going to make this happen? How are we going to do these kind of things? And before I get started on this is absolutely as informal as it possibly can be. If you have a question at any time, interrupt me. I will happily stop. I will explain anything that's not there, and we will go through this. I will be respectful for your time. I'll try to get you out of here in that hour, just a little more. If you've got questions and it goes longer, that's okay. I've got all kinds of time. And very, very right. I am absolutely a volunteer for sustainability issues. I do presentations like this, but I am also a volunteer member for the City of Red Wing Sustainability Commission, which is an advisory commission to our City Council. They've been in effect for about 4.5 to 5 years now, and have many, many issues, not just energy revolved. Frac sand within the city limits was a huge controversy. One of the big controversies was chickens. Some people ask, what brought this commission together? Well, it didn't bring it together, but it was one of the real first issues is, can we have chickens in town and what are the limits for chickens?
We just went through that.
Okay, see? And I had said that. I said that, you know, being here in Wausau, I look around and you've got the river. You've got the bluffs and the hills. Well, in Red Wing where I am, we've got the Mississippi River, the bluffs and the hills and the terrain, and I'm very familiar with northern Wisconsin. My brother-in-law has a cabin up in the Phillips area. My wife and I have a cabin over in Minong. In fact, we were there until yesterday morning when we came this way and came across some country that I hadn't seen, that part of Wisconsin on the northern side. So very much enjoyed the trip so far and had a good time here in Wausau. But with that, we'll kind of get into the City of Red Wing and our solar energy. And truly, when we say our adventure into the unknown, the City of Red Wing started our project, and here's our community as it looks. Bluffs, as you see. This thing is not going to show up on the whiteboard. That's okay. We're not that far away. But the bluffs and the river going right there, that's the Mississippi River, and we go. I don't think it'll show up on the whiteboard, but that's okay on the projector. So we are just south of the Twin Cities. For anybody who doesn't know where we are, we're 50 miles south. We're also 50 miles north of Rochester. And a lot of our community believe it's a perfect place because one member of mom and dad will go north to work in the Twin Cities, and the other one may head to the Rochester Mayo system or IBM or something. So we have most of our people live and work right in Red Wing, but we do have quite a few people that commute to other areas as that goes too. Okay. Let's start with an easy question. What's the easiest way to fight global warming? We'll just change to the Celsius scale and we'll immediately drop our temperatures by 50 degrees every day. Okay? That's as easy as I can get it. Okay. So let's go into how we put together and so on and so forth. When the city of Red Wing finally decided it was time, that we were going to put together a project on solar energy, there was no way that we were going to do it on our own. Can't do it. The city of Red Wing was just not going to have the funding and so forth to do everything. I'll come back to that slide. How it really started, the actual image that came forward. This is a small solar array that was put in the backyard of homeowners in Red Wing. They had an open house. My wife and I went to that open house because we were interested in solar energy possibly on our home or in our yard like this application is. And so we wanted to go ask some questions. Well, very quickly, I started researching the information and talking to the people that were there. And I asked some of the company representatives that were there, I said, well, do you do commercial applications? Yes, we do. And that conversation said, okay, then I want to have a conversation because I have a building in particular that I think the city of Red Wing would be perfect for solar. The exposure was right, everything was the way it should be. And so, so we went ahead and, is this possible? This might be something we could do? Might be. I wonder if it would work at the Public Works Department. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to here again. Right here, with these people. I started doing some research on solar energy and found out that there were some things out there that we possibly could use. However, all of these things were just that, possibilities. I met with Michael Allen, All Energy Solar. I believe All Energy Solar may be the company that
Yep.
you would talk with.
The cattle onion.
Yeah, that's okay. And everyone was sure that it would be perfect. They came out and looked at the site. The engineering on the site was wonderful. Everything was there. The problem was, what it always is, it's cost. 40 kW system, which is what we wanted to put on, was $350,000. And $350,000 is an absolute stop at the city of Red Wing. There's no budget, there's none here that's just going to make up $350,000. So I told him, I said, what I'm going to have to do, I'm going to have to now put this in the queue of our capital improvement program, which means it's going to be 5 years out at the minimum before we can get it budgeted, get it set in and start getting funding through finance department, through all of the places that we have to come through. It just, again, we want to do this, but we need the time to put the money to it. That's simply the way we work. So we went along a few months, and Michael Allen came back to me and said, how would you like to do your solar project at no cost? And I looked at him like we always look at him. I said, nobody does anything for no cost. And he said, no, I'm serious. No cost. Sure. What's the catch? Here's the catch. Xcel Energy. We have a twin nuclear power plant inside the city limits of the city of Red Wing. We also have a training facility owned by Xcel Energy inside the city limits. We also have a garbage burning electrical producing plant in the city limits of Red Wing. So we have been big partners with Xcel Energy for a long time, many, many years. And Xcel Energy back in the early 90s had to relicense their nuclear power plant. It was coming up. And it was a fight through the legislature, but they went ahead, they took care of that. And part of it was Xcel had to agree that they were going to commit funds to alternative fuels, to solar, wind, garbage burning, peat moss plants, anything that was renewable energy. So Xcel had this program out there called Solar Rewards. 2008, the big recession that hit everybody. The state of Minnesota came out with a program, Buy Minnesota. Again, funding was available through the state, and the last one was hit on here. Part of the reason that it's very difficult for governments to get into the solar and make it pay and show that reason it is, federal energy credits along with accelerated depreciation schedules. Those are great for businesses. Businesses want to see a return on investment of anywhere from 3 to 7 years. If they're going to invest $350,000, how can I get that money back and how fast will it pay me back? In the government, I was always working under the realm that we could extend ours a little longer. We had taxes coming in, but what we wanted to do was save it over a longer time. So we sat down, we had these conversations, and we went on from there. Then the real problem started to have. We had all of these questions that come up. And because we had all of these questions, I had to go back, and now we had to start talking about, okay, we're going to put this program together, but how are we going to do this? This is $350,000. State of Minnesota requires $100,000 being spent must be bid publicly, period. I don't know what the rules in Wisconsin are anymore. I actually used to teach public purchasing in Eau Claire, but I don't know the rules in Wisconsin anymore. So we had to go through and have a bunch of questions answered. Now, again, we'll refer back to the fact that this was going to cost the city of Red Wing $0, nothing. Well, it's going to end up on city property. The city's going to own it. Do we have to bid it? Is it legal to just go out and pick our choices for who we want to do these things and coordinate all these efforts? It took 5.5 to 6 months to get the answers to these questions right here. Everything was turned over to our legal department. Absolutely necessary. Nobody in the state of Minnesota had ever done it before. I couldn't find anybody around the United States that had done it before. And I was tied to a group called the National Institute for Governmental Purchasing, and I had lots of contacts all over the country, and they're all going, you gotta bid this, you gotta bid this. I, for the life of me, could not figure out how I was gonna write a specification that got us a contractor to put the equipment in, that tied the state of Minnesota's, so we were gonna tell them, you will use this one, period. There's only one made in Minnesota. It's made in Mountain Iron, Minnesota. You have to use that solar panel. And then the financing part was the kicker. We had a company called Newport Partners out of California that was willing to come in and finance the rest of what Xcel the state of Minnesota didn't cover. They were going to finance it because they were going to buy those energy credits from us. They were going to buy that accelerated depreciation because there are huge companies in the United States that need those credits. None of those companies cared about Red Wing. Our project was too small. They didn't care. They weren't going to come and negotiate with me individually. I couldn't write it into a spec to say that Alcoa or Pittsburgh Steel or whoever had to buy these credits. I couldn't do that. But this company bought them, but then they also bought them from Tennessee. They bought them from places in Oregon. They bought them all over the United States. And now all of a sudden, our $350,000 project, they turned into a $200 million project worth of energy credits, and now they had the attention of some of these bigger players that needed them. So that's, again, was a huge part of how we were gonna get these done. And so I'm gonna go through these because they're pretty important. Is this legal? Yes. Do we have to bid the project? No. The reason no, the city of Red Wing was not writing a check. We did not spend a dime. Is this sole source? Yes, it is, because we're getting those from the state of Minnesota, the reason being by Minnesota. State Attorney General is the one who made that ruling. And how would you even start with no bid required? And has anyone ever done this? No. And then the other thing that we had to find out was, are these solar systems really compatible with the current electrical systems? We, in our community, I would assume yours is the same. We've got 240 volt systems. We've got 220. We have 208, depending upon when the building was put in, when the building was done. So your electrical needs are different. Are they compatible, and will this system work under all of those circumstances, depending upon what we do first and second and third, and if we continue to keep going? So we had to answer all those questions. And in the end, everything was approved, and the city council said, I brought it before the council, and our city council said, yes, this is something we want you to pursue. And I really, really have to stop right here. This is not a new concept to our city council. The City Council of Red Wing has been extremely aggressive and extremely positive for my 34 years with the city of Red Wing, going back that far, for any department head, any group within the city that came forward and said, we have this project in mind, we've done our homework, and we think the city should consider it because it will save money and help the environment. And I will go back to, I started working for the city in 1981. In 1983, the city council hired 2 individuals. One was the manager for our solid waste facility, which was going to sort garbage and then burn it. And the steam that was going to be generated was going to be sent to the SB Foot Tanning Company, which tanned hides. Okay? The second person they hired was the maintenance supervisor for that facility. The only problem was, we didn't have a facility. We hadn't even started, because there were none in the United States. They were in Europe. So these 2 men were hired, and they were put on an airplane. And they went to Denmark, and they went to Norway, and they went to Sweden. And then they came back and said, we can do this. Well, again, it was that type of situation that I learned very early on. If you have a good program, if you have thought things out and it can justify it, bring it forward to the city council. Our community, our city council has always been, the environment is important. That Mississippi River right there is important. Those bluffs are important. And so it's been one of those things. And out of that same thing, when we decided to do our project, we're going to save money. Yes, that's part of it. We want to do that. Save taxpayer dollars now and into the future. We want to save energy. Absolutely. We want to lower that carbon footprint. And we want to use our example as an educational tool for everybody. We knew we were the first ones in the state of Minnesota to go through the process. We knew that this whole legal 5.5 months, everybody else was going to have to do at least a portion of it through their attorney, but we didn't want to have them to start at square one. And so that education process was something that the city of Red Wing committed to, but I committed to. That's why I'm still here today. I retired, and I still believe that it's important that we continue to tell people that it's always at least worth looking at. If I wouldn't have asked the question the first day of All Energy Solar, do you do commercial? None of this would have started. So it's just a process that you just kind of walk yourself through and keep going. So when it was all done, we had been talking about this public works building down here. Okay, no. Now that it's going to be free, what else can we do? Community development building, city hall, and the fire station. They all sit right downtown in the city of Red Wing, and they are one block. The whole block is right there. The solid waste facility is out farther, and then the public works building. City hall, very quickly.
All rooftop things? What did you do?
Originally, yes. And they didn't, there's only 2 of them that ended up being, no, one. One of them that ended up being rooftop in the end. And I'll explain that, and I'll show you some pictures as they come up. So City Hall, it's 100 years old. It's on the National Register of Historic Places. The entire downtown of Red Wing is in the National Register of Historic Buildings. So you are not going to touch that building. You're not going to put solar on the roof. You're not going to put them on the sidewalls. You're not going to put them on the front lawn or the side lawn. You can't. So it's like, well, okay, that's not good. Get rid of that. Community development. We had some structural issues. This building is a very unique building. The roof is not flat. It's multi-leveled, and it was architecturally designed that way. But very quickly they found out that there was no load capacity left on that roof. So we couldn't set them up there. And the Public Works building. Public Works building is your typical, and I would say very typical Public Works building. It's a steel shed, big, steel building. And the company that we worked with, look at that, how can he possibly do that? All Energy Solar said that their equipment on a roof had been certified by engineers to 105-mile-an-hour winds. That's a big wind, 105 miles an hour. Well, before we got started, right as we were in this planning stage, there was a nasty storm up in northwestern Minnesota. And there was a solar system on a roof, the same type of building that we had, got hit by 135-mile-an-hour winds. And it didn't tear the solar system off that roof. It took the solar system and the roof. It was still bolted together. Well, I looked at it and I said, there's no way I can do this. I cannot tell my public works department there's a potential that you may not have a building to work out of for 6, 8, maybe 10 months. They just weren't gonna buy that. So it's like all of a sudden we're like, well, wow, now what do we do? So we moved on and we crossed all those off. So we had community development gone, city hall gone, and public works gone. Then came an idea, and this is a very, very key idea, carports. We found out that with carports it was possible to put this up, and our no longer structural issues for our buildings were gone. Didn't matter. Put up a carport. So with that, back off. With that, we added City Hall back on, and we added a Public Works maintenance building where we maintain all of our city's equipment. I know your fleet management person's out here. So we maintain that building. So now all of a sudden our list is back up to 6. Well, we'd already started the process and we were going through the first set of our things for 2012, and that was the fire station and the waste facility, and those were a go. And those were getting funded and everything was right, and they were on track and at zero expense, none. And these are the concepts. I told you that City Hall and the fire station, this is our fire station, this is the community development building, and then this side over here is where City Hall sits. And the city owns that parking lot. Well, there's enough room on that for a 40 kilowatt system that would feed into this building, 40 kilowatt system that will feed into City Hall, and you can see them up here already. There's already a system that was on that roof because that one was okay. That was just a regular flat concrete roof that was easy to attach to. And this is what it would look like from the street view when it was there. The nice thing about it is the fire station sits over here. It's a nice 2.5-story building, community development building. So when you look at it, just architecturally blended in very nicely in the area. Public Works facility. This is our Public Works maintenance building here. This is the general area where all of our employees park. And as you can see, we have 2 separate entities here. This system fed into this building, and this system fed right over here, and right over here was our main Public Works facility right next here. And so these were our concept drawings of how this could work. So in the end, the 2012, when we got done with the first 2 that we did in 2012, 100% of these projects were paid for. The city had zero expense, absolute zero. We started saving energy day 1 when they came online. The next grouping came in, and Xcel recipients had to be willing to put in 10% of the cost of the project, okay? And we had to structurally build these carports. That became our expenses. In the end, $66,000 on $660,000 worth of solar equipment is what the city invested the second time around. This is a spreadsheet very much showing all of the variations of how that worked. And when it's all said and done, the cost of all of these, through all these years that we did them, this actually extended into 2014, but this is when we approved them. And in the end, our carports cost us a little more than we thought they were going to, because one of the other things we did, that parking lot in between City Hall was absolutely due for an overlay. Well, we weren't just going to go in there and not do that first. So we decided if we're going to put these steel footings in there for the steel beams, we're going to do it, and then we're going to overlay it, and then now it's done, and Public Works doesn't have to worry about it for the next 50, 60 years. So we did some work on site as well to prep for this, and so our actual costs got to 100, total, these 2 being separate projects. But the bottom line is the project, when it was all said and done, total expenditures, $1.6 million. Over 40 years expected life, the savings to the community is going to be $2.25 million. That alone is a big enough difference that our city council would have said, you know, we need to find a way to look at this at least. The bottom line, when the city of Red Wing found out their total expenses were down to here, it was just not going to be a problem whatsoever. So they did this, and this number's changed. Changed drastically to the better. Part of the reason it changed drastically is when they did their estimates, they made sure that we were not going to be low on what they promised us it would do. But the thing that happened better than that was a year ago. The company that made our solar panels has a research lab. That research lab accelerates weather conditions. How can they tell us these are going to last 40 years? They put them in this lab, and they put them through rain, they put them through sun, they put them through heat and cold, and they find and find. After 32 to 35 years, the company started seeing some delamination in their solar panels. Not all of them, but some of them. They didn't like that. That was not acceptable to the company. The company came back and they said, you have these panels. We told you they would last 40 years. We are going to stand by our word. They came in and they replaced every one of those panels for free. 3-generation newer panels. 3-generation newer panels mean they're more efficient. They're going to give us a better return. This number is now going up. And it's going up closer to $2.5 million. That is going to be gained because of the project. And that's straight savings to the citizens of Red Wing on operating expenses. And these are actual pictures as these exist today. So here's our carport, community development building. There's our historic city hall. And part of the reason, again, I told you that these were all in the historic district of Red Wing. That back wall, 2 inches from that back wall is where the historic district stops. So this carport is not on the district. Otherwise, it couldn't have been permitted. Now, once we put the power lines underground, that doesn't matter. You cannot change the exterior of that building in any way, shape, or form. We never touched it. I'll also bring out this little surround right here. You can just barely catch the back side of it here. There are 2 power generators behind here, and there's 1 power generator behind here. 208, 220, 240 volts all in the same block. They are compatible. The buildings cannot feed each other, but the fire station has its own solar system on the roof, which is 240 volt system for them. Half of this is a 220 volt system which feeds that building, and the last half of this is a 208 volt system which feeds that building. So the compatibility on the electrical side works. And in one city block of Red Wing, we show 3 different sizes of. Yes, sir.
So all these facilities, compared to what they had with the traditional stuff that they had before, there's never been any breakdown or any issues as far as air conditioning or heating or anything electrical? Everything's remained the same, or it's actually that much better now?
It's better.
Than what we've had before?
It's better. It's better, again, because when we went into some of these buildings, we had to upgrade the service panel. Mm-hmm. And so you take that service panel, especially in this old building, and you upgrade it. Now, it wasn't just solely for that reason. It was in the capital improvement budget. But again, our finance director and city council understood the fact that sometimes you need to take money out of 2019 and kick it to 17 and flip-flop. And so some of those numbers were flip-flopped, so those projects got priority, they were pushed forward, and others had to suffer a year or two, but that's how these were paid for.
Government understands that, residents don't, but government.
I understand, yeah, I agree with you completely. And so, yeah, and so that's this, and this is that parking lot that was redone. The other thing that I really, really have to point out, parking's always critical. Wherever you are, I don't care if you're a public works building, if it's whatever. Our city hall was the same way. City hall, everybody wants to be here, community development building. This building is now, it's called Ignite. And what Ignite is a program that was put together by President Obama to bring high-speed internet to rural America, to everybody anywhere. And high-speed internet meant really high-speed internet. Red Wing, being a community of 16,000 people, was the smallest of 25 communities around the country that was chosen to be a center for this high-speed internet. In Winona, there's a company called Hiawatha broadband communication that was on its way to Red Wing anyway with full fiber optic. So between the government funding for them, the government funding for this building has a hub in the basement of it that is as fast of internet service as you can get anywhere in the world. What this building is, it's an incubator. It's an incubator for small businesses, for entrepreneurs. That guy that's got that idea, but he needs connectivity right now, and he needs big time speed over that wire. They'll bring him into here, they sit down with that person, they look at his map for his company, where am I going, how am I going to get there? They can give him free rent up to a year. And that's through the Port Authority of the City of Red Wing and our economic development tools that are available. That's what that building is currently used to do. And there are several businesses in town that have moved out of this building and now are stationed throughout the community and have started to hire some employees, and so that's growing. So, but the other thing that happened was the parking pattern for our employees changed dramatically. Didn't take the employees real long to figure out that if it's pouring rain and you can park your car underneath the carport, snow, and when it's 97 degrees and sunny. So now all of a sudden all the parking stalls right in front of City Hall and those primary ones, the employees weren't taking them up and parking them in anymore. Now they're all parking here first thing. And it's really a parking lot that the general public never used anyway, so it really kind of got them out of that situation. So we have a secondary that happened in that. This is the governor from the state of Minnesota. Mark Dayton came down and for an event, and this is our council president at the time, and this is that community development building, the Ignite building that was there, and we were telling the governor about this project, and right there, unscripted, I was standing over here watching, the very first question that came out of his mouth was, well, are those solar panels made in Minnesota? And the council president was extremely happy to be able to say, yes, they were. And so he thought this was a wonderful project as well, and took off from there. And so here are some of those installations. This is our fire station, very clean, very neat. This is from the street view, so you can barely see it's there. And I must stop. Our fire chief, longtime friend, known him for 30-some years we worked together. And this building was due for a new roof. Perfect timing. Okay? So we got the roofing company up there, we got the solar company up there, and the solar company said, okay, let's go. We need to drill 164 holes in this concrete deck to support that system. My fire chief looked at me, and honest to God, the words that came out of his mouth were, no way in hell.
I thought you were going to say something worse than that.
Right there. He looked at me flat out. You are not putting 164 holes in the roof of my fire station. That's 164 possible leaks. He was right. So what are we going to do? Send it back to the solar company and say, no, we can't do that. They came back a little while later and said, we got a great solution. 60 holes. Fire chief said, you think that sounds good? That's still 60 possible leaks. No. Well, they went back. This system now, you can see them here, and underneath here. It's a teeter-totter. There's a center pipe that goes right down the middle. It's got 7 points. It's got 7 points on the front end that are anchored. The ones on the front end can all be released so you can lift it up and clean underneath there if you have to and get stuff out of there. 14 penetrations in that roof. Now my fire chief said, go ahead. I can handle 14. So that's how that one shaped up.
For us, within 2 to 3 years, I'm hoping we do have 2 new fire stations. The other buildings, I'm working on.
Red Wing's building a new one right now too. Yeah, they are. And so those are always fun. This is out at our solid waste facility. The solid waste facility, this is where we used to burn garbage and send it to. The city no longer burns garbage at this facility. It has become a transfer station only. The garbage is still brought in, it's separated, all the recyclables taken out of it. They still take household waste. They take lumber from construction jobs, everything at this site. Xcel Energy had a garbage burning plant, has in Red Wing, and we had one. 30 years of struggle to get enough garbage to keep both of them running at maximum efficiency. You know, you fight, you do this, you do this, you do this. Well, finally the city council said that's enough. They went together with Xcel Energy again, had a conversation and said, if we give you all of our garbage, will you now run at maximum capacity? Will your burner be efficient as you can make it? The answer was yes. So the city council made the decision at that point to shut down the operation here, burning here. Now it goes there, plus we continue to get more garbage, and we actually have more. And so we actually send some down to the Olmsted County and Rochester facility as well, which makes them more efficient and so forth. So now we have 2 burners that are truly burning at their best efficiency that they ever have, and the city is now shut down, so this one's not operating anymore. And this is the ones that showed up. Again, these are mostly our employees that come in. These are the guys that go plow snow at 2 a.m. and they come in and they get done and they're really happy they don't have to brush that snow off the cars in the hot weather. I have to stop for a moment on this building. This is our maintenance shop. Oh, I'll back that up. This is our Public Works maintenance shop. The city of Red Wing is 44.5 square miles. That's big. We are the 4th largest community in Minnesota by square mileage wise. We have the most parkland per capita of any city in the state. 16,000 community, we have 257 vehicles that have to be maintained. I don't know how many Wausau has, but 257 for a community our size is pretty much unheard of. It's a lot. But we have a garbage fleet. We pick up all the garbage in town. We, have our fire department. We have our police department. We, public works vehicles and parks, and our purpose was a 72-inch riding lawnmower is a vehicle. It's got tires, it's got wheels, it needs oil changes, all those maintenance items, so it's a vehicle. Anyway, this one solar system down there generates more electricity in a year than this building uses. In addition to that, 100% of that building's heat is waste oil from our vehicles. So that building is carbon negative at the year's end. The carbon footprint on that building is negative. The dollars we spend, Xcel Energy owes us a check at the end of the year. And so that building is something that does not come along very often.
Another question.
Yep.
Xcel Energy, your energy provider, were they receptive from the very beginning? I know you have different credits and stuff. Easy to work with?
Yeah, very much so. And again, this is part of their rewards. One of the things that I should point out, if you look at these, with the exception of the one that was on our waste incinerator plant, those were fairly straight up. These are pretty flat systems. Xcel Energy, when they do the Xcel Energy rewards and we get the money, part of that was they oversaw the engineering. These panels are set up so that their peak time that they're most efficient is during peak energy times from 1st of June to 15th of September. That's why they're flatter. If you want them to be peak for the whole season, you'd put them at more of an angle, but all of our systems are fairly flat, and that's because Xcel Energy, instead of going out on the market and buying expensive energy, they could fund these, and then this really cuts down on the amount of energy. So that's part of the reason Xcel really...
You're lucky with that, because it's just an observation. Wisconsin Public Service, let's be diplomatic, and just needs a little more encouragement, a little more receptive.
Yep. And as I get going, we'll talk about that too a little bit farther down the road here. Again, education. Education for our projects was huge. We got a lot of good press through it, which was a great thing. A lot of good things happened. And a lot of people, and not just Minnesota public entities. I probably sent out 24 discs with our legal contract in less than a week after they were finally approved by our legal staff. I had lots of people that had known about it and said, as soon as you get that, we need to see those contracts. There's 5 different contracts for each one of these 6 that have to be signed. Purchase power agreements, and technically, the company from California that financed the last portion to get our energy credits, they own these systems for 6.5 years. After 6.5 years, the city of Red Wing pays $1, and then we own them for the remainder of the 40. We get the energy immediately, so there had to be a rental agreement because they're on our property, but they own them. Then there had to be an agreement for the power purchase. Then there had to be an agreement that after 6.5 years, we get to buy them back. And it's not market rate, it's $1. And so there were contracts upon contracts that had to be figured out, and they did it.
Your buyout after 6.5 years was $1?
It will be, we're not there yet.
Okay.
Which is also good because of,
That was gonna be.
Yeah.
the day.
yeah, any maintenance or anything that would happen to take place. There's been a little maintenance. We had one of the paint on one of the carports started to peel and so forth. Well, maintenance issue. So we basically called up the company out of California, Newport Partners, and says the paint on your carport out here facility is rusting and there's some problems. And they said, well, that's your problem. And I said, well, no, it's not, because until we get them back, the carports are actually under yours. And they looked at it, they said, yeah, you're right. You know a good painter in town that we could hire? So it was the same person that did the work. It just, for the first 6.5 years, we have no costs on maintenance of any, and that's the only, we haven't done anything. They replaced the panels free, and we've had to retouch up one piece of paint. That's it. And I take that back. I shouldn't say that's the only maintenance. I worked in the Public Works building, and each one of these systems has an inverter. They don't have one, they have 3. They have 3 powers inverters, and the reason they do that is because if one fails, you still get 2/3 of the power off of that system until they fix it. So one day, and this may be as good a time as any, one day I was sitting in my office, and it was early on in the program, and I walked out back and I looked at the inverters, and one of the inverters was reading 0. I was like, that's not good. So I knew that they weren't out there yet, and I'll just send this around. And there it
How
is.
often do you go out there checking the equipment or somebody from your staff?
This right here,
I mean,
not at all.
Not at all.
This is, well, I'll take that keyboard. I'll just pass that around. What that is there's a computer program that's now attached to every one of these systems. Every one of these systems is monitored minute by minute by minute of actual production. What's going around is a 3-week summary, and so you can tell every one of those days, the ones, there's a big spike, and there'll be a little spike, that's a cloudy day, and then a big spike, and a big spike, and a cloudy day. And if they come down, if there's a drastic, the people from All Energy Solar are monitoring that every day. I waited till 8 o'clock in the morning to call All Energy Solar, and I said, I've got a problem. And the guy on the other end says, well, look out your door, or your window. And I looked out the window, and there was an All Energy truck already there. They knew it before I did. And they had already sent somebody down, and yes, that one inverter had gone bad. And so out of all of our systems, 3 on each one, 6, that's 18, we had one inverter that went bad in the first 10 days. Pretty typical with electronic equipment. If they're going to fail early on because something was wrong when it got manufactured. And so that's where we found out on that process. So all those things came together. And then I've talked about this National Institute of Governmental Purchasing. This was an innovation award that the City of Red Wing was given because of this project. Innovation to find a way to make it happen. Again, all those legal questions that now went around the world. I have done this same presentation several places in Minnesota, a couple now in Wisconsin, and in Philadelphia. In Philadelphia, I was at the National Forum for Governmental Purchasing, and that was 1,300 purchasing agents from around the United States, Canada, and several from other countries as well that have all seen this. I bring this site up. This is our our water treatment facility. This site sits on the southern part of town. This is the middle of the winter, and I wanted this picture because you can see how the sun hits here. The engineers, this is going to happen for the City of Red Wing. We are going to do this site, but we are going to pay for it now ourselves. Our water bills are considered all enterprise funds, so the water has to feed, generate the water, enough income to run your business, just like any other business. So we are, any expenses that are incurred, we're going to pay for them out of the water fund so that they immediately get all of the savings back, and it's theirs from day one. Because this building, when we go to Xcel Energy and say we want help from your solar rewards, and we go to other places and say we want your help, there's a scale from 1 to 100. And that's what the site rates out at for solar there's not trees in the way, there's not big bluffs in the way, there's, those kind of things, and watch your angle to the sun. 80 is the minimum required by Xcel Energy or you're out. Well, this building was surveyed, everything came back, and a man from All Energy Solar named Nick Nelson came down and said, Jay, he said, I got something pretty unique to tell you. And I said, well, what's that? He said, this building right here, as an engineer, we've been taught that even in Minnesota, with the solar the way it is, it's possible that you could have better production of solar in the winter than you do in the summer. And he says, he said, everyone has always said that sounds crazy, but okay. Well, this building came out with a 96 overall rating. 98 in the winter, 94 in the summer. It has an absolute perfect exposure to the winter sun with the angle of the bluffs that they basically would end up on that side of the building and this side of the building is where the solars would be. If they contour them exactly the way the bluff lays, they get better solar production. But overall, a 96 is just phenomenal. And so this one, again, this is one that we're going to do on our own, and it's going through that capital process. Again, there's not $1.1 million to do this building by itself because that's our single largest user of electricity. Massive pumps, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and every gallon of water that goes through the city of Red Wing supply comes through that facility. And it has to do with magnesium, cleaning the magnesium and lots of other things out of the water, but it goes through that facility, and so that one will be.
Right now you've got 6 systems, one of them is on the roof.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. The City of Red Wing, in addition to those things, as I talked about, has done a lot of other things. So these are things on the production side of life. In addition to the production side, everybody in this room needs to pay attention to the reduction side of life. So that is an electric hybrid. Our city inspectors, engineering inspectors, and engineering and inspections, they had a 4-wheel drive pickup truck that got about 6.5 miles to the gallon. This particular unit gets 36 to 37, running around town, and then it's got a gas engine that'll take over when needed, and they were happy to have it because every day they didn't have to go out in the mud and, on those kind of job sites. Sometimes they were going into a development area where everything was blacktop. Well, and that inspector would take this rig here. Okay, now this piece of paper that you have in front of you. This talks about what we've done for our carbon emissions, and we said that this was going to be our baseline. The numbers are on the sheet, and you can see that when we started 2011, before the first one, this is 12 major buildings in the city of Red Wing, 6 of which are part of this program. This is called B3. It's a program in the state of Minnesota that's required for all government entities have to enter information every month on B3 on your square footage of the building and your total consumption of electric and natural gas. And it's so that the City of Red Wing library I can pull up the City of Red Wing's library and it'll give me a comparative to every library in the state of Minnesota. So am I really high on my costs? Am I in the middle? Am I low? I can do it for my city hall, I can do it for public works, I can do it for any building, and I can get a quick reading as to whether I'm high or low. But the bottom line here is, obviously, this is this dotted line is where we would be if we hadn't done anything. This isn't just the solar projects, this is the solar projects and changing lights out and putting new furnaces in, and those things were going to happen anyway through this curve. But through this entire process, obviously here, you take a look here, $2.27 per square foot. Now we're down to 106. That's tax dollars. That's tax dollars every day that come back. And then, your average cost of CO, per pound, the cost per pound doesn't change, but here's my reduction. There's a 54% reduction in the carbon footprint off of those 12 buildings. That's a big number, 54%. And these are the 12 biggest users of electricity and gas in the city of Red Wing. Besides that one that we're going to do separately. But, so that's a big number. And so that was, again, did we achieve our goal of lowering our carbon footprint that we had initially? Absolutely. Did we achieve our goal of lowering our costs? Yes, we did. And I guess being here today kind of shows that we're still hoping to educate a few people on the system. Yes, sir.
Not to be a pessimist, Sally, but two different questions for you. Number one, after the savings and everything, I'm sure you had your skeptics. Did your employees, did the residents buy into it? And then number two, what are the negatives? What was promised, what was supposed to happen that hasn't?
Okay.
Two questions.
Two questions. Okay, this is the exact same thing you guys just saw. Another way to offsets. There we go. These are things I wanted to get to.
You got a free Mustang right now.
No. I can't resist. Okay? No, I didn't take anything free.
Kidding.
No. It made our people in Red Wing aware, because now all of a sudden they started to see these things around town. It's like, what's that? Again, it was brought before the city council. It was discussed at the council meetings. It was in the newspaper.
Sure.
But people just didn't grasp until all of a sudden now they drove out to Public Works to pay their utility bill, and it's like, what's that thing out there? So there started to be these conversations. And you talk about this and you talk about that, and you start to see different things happening and people's mindsets change. I'm a gearhead from way back. I built a 1968 Chevrolet, the engine on it myself. I drove that car until something clicked in my head that said, as a 17-year-old idiot, this could be a bad thing if I keep driving it, so I sold it. But I always knew that I was going to have another one. I started researching, I started doing my homework. I wanted another muscle car. I wanted that. But at the same point, it's like, I can't go back to 6 miles to the gallon. That's what my other one did. I can't do that. This is a Mustang. The first week I bought it, I had to go to a purchasing agent meeting north of the Twin Cities. I went through the Lowry Tunnel in Minneapolis, and from that point forward, I knew I was on a freeway going north, and all the incoming traffic was coming south, so I wasn't going to have any problem. 6-speed manual transmission. The 6th gear is what they consider a highway overdrive. I hit the button on it to find out what my mileage was going to be, and when I pulled off at Albertville on the ramp, I had just gotten 37.1 miles to the gallon. 37.1 miles to the gallon with a muscle car that truly will get up and go anytime you want it to me was incredible and phenomenal, and that's why I own this car today, is that I can justify it in my mind because I can get good mileage with it, but yet it's extremely fun to drive every day I get a chance to. But those are the kind of mindsets that started happening in Red Wing. Was will this change? We started to see houses, brand new houses were being built, and those houses, especially in new subdivisions that don't have trees, that don't have anything established, perfect places to start. And all of a sudden they started popping up on houses. Hobgoblin Music. It's a world-renowned music facility, and if you look it up, the thing to look up is Stony End harps. These are handmade harps out of this old barn. And you can also go in here, and on the second floor is a store with handmade guitars, handmade ukuleles, and all of these people that do this handcraft, they know each other. So he sells harps and guitars and so forth, and another store sells, and so anyway, but solar panels, he just had to put them. I think I've got another one here. This is a local nursery. Again, the man who owns this actually did a study about 8 years ago. Couldn't afford it. There was not enough return of investment. There are no programs anymore for financing this and getting the energy credits. Those are gone. There are still some incentives from the federal government. His payback on this system, when he finally went back and did it again, he was stunned. 3.5 years. He said, as a business owner, I'm crazy if I don't do this. 3.5 years. Downtown Red Wing, historic district. You cannot see, you cannot change anything that you can see from the street. This is the rooftop, this is 3rd Street in Red Wing. These are all historic buildings. This is a historic building. But because that's 2 stories high and as flat as they are, you can't see it. That's a coffee shop in downtown Red Wing. When the 2nd floor is apartment, and that whole building now is all furnished with electricity from those solar panels. Again, he did the math. He said he couldn't afford not to do it. His payback was about 4.5 years, 4.6. And this is the biggest one. The city of Red Wing wants to continue solar. They want to have more. We have 6 buildings now. How do we get that better? The Red Wing School District very easily saw what we did and said, we need to get on board with this. The Red Wing School District had a tremendous amount of land when they bought a whole farm that's really bad land for farming, bad for everything, rocky and everything else. So the school district and the city of Red Wing had conversations. And this is a perfect opportunity. I know that there are several places that are represented, other communities here. The city of Red Wing, Goodhue County, which we are the county seat, and the Red Wing School District, for the last 15 years, and it was a struggle prior to that, but for the last 15 years, have really, really emphasized working with each other. The very first thing that we convinced all of our entities to do was to get one contract for elevator maintenance. The city of Red Wing had a contract, the school district had a contract, and the county had 4 contracts because their buildings were here, 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 and here. I'm the only purchasing agent for those 3 groups. Everybody else is handled through finance, so I agreed that I would write that spec. We went out and we did an elevator contract, and our costs went down by 38%. The biggest one that went down was the school districts, and then the counties and the cities wasn't as much because we already had a contract, but I took it and expanded it. It went so well. We did fire alarms. We did smoke monitoring for our fire alarms. We do all of our chemical applications for parks and playgrounds and schools are all under one contract. We went along and we started looking and said, what do we all do? What do each one of our entities do that we all do the same? So if something has to be delivered, your delivery point is virtually the same. If a maintenance person comes, and that's how the elevator contract got down so low. This elevator person was driving an hour, hour and a half, depending upon where their serviceman came from. He never left town. He'd come on a service call, but he would never leave town without doing an annual inspection on 2 or 3 of the other elevators at the same time, so we never got charged a service fee. We never got charged for that dead drive time. They would just roll that in, and that's part of the reason. It was by combining those things. So this system, the school district went and had all of their buildings evaluated, the city of Red Wing had the rest of their buildings evaluated, and these were 2 separate bids that went out. The school district bid theirs, the city of Red Wing bid theirs, knowing that all of it was going to be placed on this one site. In the end, one contractor got both bids, so this now is 50%, well, and it's been classified as a community solar garden, as a solar garden, and the rules of solar gardens in Minnesota are no entity can have more than 40%. Going into it, the city knew that, so the city has 40% of this whole system, combined between the city and the school district has 40%, and the other 20% was sold off to 2 different businesses in town that really wanted to get part of that too, but didn't have the space and the location to do it. So 100% of this electricity is all being used in the city limits of Red Wing. The school district is, I don't know exactly, they're not as high, but now the city of Red Wing with our systems and this system, we're up to about 91% of all the electricity the city uses is up to solar. We'll hit 100 when that one for the water treatment facility goes online. That'll take us 100% of all the city's use now become from solar. So you ask, how do things? The people of Red Wing saw the city of Red Wing's project in the end, the information that showed up in the newspaper where they saw that there was going to be a return on that money, where they're actually, you can physically say this is less. it made them start thinking. And the thinking process was, well, boy, if the city can do that and they can show that, well, then they made a phone call and they got it put on their own personal roof for their house. But then our small businesses went ahead and did it. And the biggest thing that has happened, I've got a copy of it in there that reminds me, Red Wing Shoe Company is and has been a part of Red Wing for 100 years. Big factories. Well, again, Red Wing Shoe Company did not want to put solar on their roof and so forth, but about 4 months ago signed the contract, so they took 40% of 2 different solar gardens in southern Minnesota. So they are getting their electricity off of solar, but it's not on site, it's community solar gardens. So we have mom and pop kind of operation, small, medium-sized businesses that have gone ahead and done it themselves because they found out that the payback was less than 5 years without the financial aids that we had. Red Wing Shoe Company, huge employer, huge company, said, no, we need to do this too. They did it. And so these things have become more and more common, but in addition to that, it's more than that. The Sustainability Commission that we have in the city of Red Wing, and I've talked about a little bit, took it a step farther. You've got your production and your reduction. Well, we just completed the first phase of a program for, it's called Partners in Energy. And basically what it is again, it's trying to get residents and small to medium businesses to do something to reduce their energy consumption. Well, how do you do that? Again, you look to, let me back up. You look to the state of Minnesota, in your case, the state of Wisconsin, you look to the utilities, and you look on the national level to find any kind of funds, any kind of programs, any kind of resources out there. We did that. There are rebate programs from manufacturers. There are rebate programs from utility companies. In some cases, again, there's other things that are out there. One of the things we were able to do was work with our local utility. And for residents in the city of Red Wing right now, you can have a home energy audit done on your home. It's called an Energy Squad Visit / home energy audit. Well, normally it's going to cost you probably $185. Okay, which doesn't sound bad, but at the same point in time, it's like, well, what are they going to tell me? No. Working with these 3 things, we got that price down to $100. You make a phone call, 1 phone call. 2 people show up, and I'm now speaking from personal experience. This is from somebody who has worked on my house. My house is insulated. I have put new windows in my house. This is a 1961 home, but I've taken care of it. They came to my house. One person that's there is an actual mechanical engineer. And he's got the thermal sensor. He's looking all around, checking to see what's leaking here and where this is, and if your door seals are correct. The other guy is with the Home Energy Squad, and he's just coming in, and he starts looking all over the house, and that's an old bulb, that's an old bulb, that's an old bulb. And by the time he got done, and I had CFLs throughout my house, very few of the new LEDs. But when he got done, I had 37 new LED light bulbs that I didn't even, in my mind, hadn't really paid attention. They were in closets. They were up in the rafters of my garage. You know, when they turn them on, you just kind of ignore them. They just came on, no, but there were 37. They put new low flow aerators on my faucets. They gave me a new low flow shower head, a water heater blanket, all these things. I already had a setback thermostat, but if you don't have one, it was there. Well, I paid them $100, and when they got done, we had a list of everything they did. And when they got done with that list of everything they did, in my house that I thought I was pretty good at, we got $147 of things free, not counting the labor of the guy to put them all in. And I got the energy savings from them immediately, right the minute they left. Less than 24 hours later, I got the report from the guy with the infrared and all those things. My front door was terrible. The sealer on the front door had failed. Lo and behold, the next time they were in town, the guy from the Home Energy Squad came back and he put a new seal on that door, and that didn't cost me anything either.
And 2 more things, because like I said, I got to be cognizant of everybody's time. We're running a little bit over.
Oh, okay.
And answer this to the second question. What have been the negatives? What have been things that were promised that weren't able to happen or haven't been delivered or still working on yet?
You know, and I'm gonna tell you this, and nobody ever believes me when I tell you this. Through this project of our solar, none. Everything that was promised was delivered. Yes, in the beginning, when we started having issues with engineering, with our structural engineer that came back and said, no, that roof can't handle it. I mean, that's a downer, that's a disappointment. We were ready to go, we wanted these buildings done. But we worked through those things, and then the carport idea came up, and with all the extra benefits. And so the only real negatives to this entire thing is that at that waste facility and that big huge array that's sitting on that side, 2 days ago I got a phone call from the manager out there, and it was because the guy from Rochester wanted to talk to me about these carport idea, and he's not happy with me now because he would wish that I would have done carports on his facility because he wants to expand out that wall. Well, I've limited him for 40 years. He's not out expanding out that wall for 35 more years. It's not going to happen. I mean, you could take that whole array down and move it and do all those things, but
You're fully aware you're never gonna make everybody happy.
I get that. See, and that's why I say none. I have none from this particular thing that we've done. There just weren't any negatives. We didn't have any setbacks. We didn't have, you know, they promised them, they said they'd be up and running on this day, and this day, they were there. They were right there, and so far we've hit all of our numbers. When they tell us you're gonna make this much savings, that's what we're there. The numbers are better than what we were promised.
Do any members of the audience have any questions of our guests, comments? Fire away.
Yes, sir.
How much weather damage did you have? Did you have and when?
None. That was, again, it was a major concern with what's gonna happen, again, over weather conditions and so forth. And we're like any other community. We get the big storms and so on and so forth. One of the things that, part of a presentation, and it wasn't All Energies, it was a different company that presented. They had this nice, 4x4 panel on the thing. He looked around the room and he just went, "You, go over here." He stood on the middle of it and said, "Start jumping." He stood there and jumped up and down for 2 minutes. It didn't crack, it didn't, nothing. And the individual that was doing it probably weighed 230, 240 pounds. Didn't hurt it a bit. He said, can we guarantee you that hail will never? They said, no, we can't guarantee that, but that's all part of the warranty on them and the company's reputation of taking care of their customers. So weather has not affected any of this. Now, you get 8-10 inches of snow, and all of a sudden that little chart that goes like this, that first morning, it's right down here. But if you get the first little corner, because it's black, those solar panels are really dark, you get that first little corner up there open, and it opens up pretty quickly. But it takes a little while for that snow to slough off. And that again, it was one of the things when we did the carports, we looked at them close enough that we knew where that slough was going to go. The Community Development City Hall building, we had to change our gutter for the stormwater runoff system on the ground because it was going to, the parking lot went this way and all the water ran down the middle in a way. Now we had to dome it because we had to get that water from the parking lot over to the edge where we knew the water was going to come from the sloughing off the roof as well. Otherwise we'd end up with 2 separate storm systems coming out of there. And so that was one of the things I said. We were lucky in that we were going to rebuild that parking lot anyway. So the infrastructure just got peeled out of there, new gravel, and reset it accordingly and changed the water flow pattern.
Any other questions?
In your solar garden scenario, so like the businesses that are got that 20%, that 20%, are they actually hardwired into that, or are they just getting credits?
They get a credit off. It comes off the grid.
So everyone's just getting credits.
Everybody gets credits. Yep, comes right off your bill.
Those projects, all the energy is exported off-site and metered.
Right.
And then depending upon who's a subscriber, their percentage of that energy that's
So you're
exported
just farming.
shows up at their bill.
Yep.
It's going back to the utility's next path of least resistance beyond that garden, but it is metered before it goes out.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so is that how it works then as far as like getting credits for it? So if it's on your building and at night you don't have any lights on and, well, I guess there's no sun. But if you have a building that maybe was only used in the summer and it's not in the winter, so when the sun hits that, there's no energy maybe in the building,
But you're still getting
But you're
credits
still
all winter long.
Okay, so you still get credits. So
And that will depend on your utilities regulation.
Sure.
So,
Yes. Yes.
Wisconsin Public Service has a different program than Xcel has, than,
Yep.
We Energy, so it depends, and you can work with your provider to understand the cost of that exported energy, which
Okay.
can vary,
Sure.
but there should be some valuation there.
And the community solar gardens is gonna be another thing that each individual utility company is gonna regulate differently. The Minnesota Pollution, PUC, Public Utilities Commission, regulates these community solar gardens, and they're the ones that said only 40% can go to one business and so on and so forth. But they're also available not only to businesses, but in Minnesota, they're available to homeowners. 100% of the electricity at my home is not in an area where I've got bluffs on 3 sides of me, and I'm down in this valley. So I had my house evaluated, and it really wasn't a good candidate, but I have now, through Xcel, signed up, and so my electricity is now being generated by wind and solar, but it all comes right straight on that utility bill. And again, those are things that you would have to work individually, and I don't know what the Wisconsin one here is, but.
I think we need to wrap up, turn people loose if they want to go. We need to thank him